My husband once kicked me in the stomach so hard when I told him I was pregnant. I lost our baby right there on the kitchen floor. I was bleeding, crying, and broken. And you know what he did? He stepped over me, told me to clean it up myself. He said, "You're not carrying my child." That thing was a mistake. That was 30 years ago. And I never told anyone. Not my mother. Not even my priest. I carried that silence like a coffin inside me. For 3 decades, I was a prisoner in my own home, tortured by the man who vowed to protect me. And now? Now he's the one knocking on my door, begging, pleading, asking for help from the woman he once left bleeding on the tiles. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I truly want to know. And if you believe stories like mine deserve to be heard, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because what you're about to hear might sound like a story, but for women like me, it's reality. I remember the taste of iron in my mouth, not from a metal spoon or an old nail, from my own blood, thick, warm, pooling between my teeth after he struck me so hard I hit the fridge. It was 1992. I was 37 and 2 months pregnant with what would have been our third child. I say would have because that baby never made it. Not after my husband, Dale, slammed me to the ground when I told him. "Are you trying to trap me again?" he roared. "What are you, some baby machine now? Who the hell told you to get pregnant again, huh?" He didn't just yell. He lifted me by my hair, threw me onto the cold tile like I was a dirty towel, and kicked me right in the belly. Once, twice. I felt something shift inside me. And then, the wet warmth. I remember crawling toward the sink, thinking maybe water would stop it. Water doesn't stop miscarriages. He left. Didn't even look back. I lay there all night, shivering, the blood soaking through my nightgown, feeling like my soul had spilled out with the child. I hadn't even picked a name yet. And the worst part? I didn't tell anyone. Not even my mother. Because Dale always had a way of making me feel like the villain. He'd say things like, "You're lucky I even let you stay here. No man in his right mind would touch a wrinkled prune like you. If you ever leave, you'll be sleeping under a bridge with your woman power nonsense. I should have married your sister. At least she shut her mouth." When you hear those words every day for 30 years, you start believing them. You start hiding the bruises with long sleeves. Start flinching when someone raises their hand, even just a wave. Start shrinking in your own skin, like you don't deserve space. I raised 2 boys under that roof. One ran off and never looked back. The other, well, you'll learn about him soon. Turns out, he learned more from his father than I thought. So why didn't I leave? Why does any woman stay? Because no one tells you how hard it is to start over at 50, 60, even 67. Because your knees ache, your savings are gone, your confidence is dust. And because deep down, you're terrified no one will believe you, or worse, they'll say you deserved it. But I'm telling my story now. Because everything changed the day Dale lost everything. And suddenly, I wasn't just the beaten wife anymore. I became the one with the keys. The one with the power. Stick with me through this story, friend. You'll see. You'll understand why I smile now when he knocks on my door. And if you've ever felt like I did, invisible, worthless, used, I'm here to tell you, you're none of those things. You are power. You are survival. You are still here. I used to think the worst kind of pain was physical. A broken rib, a black eye, a split lip. But I was wrong. The deepest bruises are the ones no one can see, the ones that fester in your soul, where no bandage can reach. After the miscarriage, something inside me shattered. But I didn't get time to grieve. Dale wouldn't let me. The day after I lost the baby, I was scrubbing blood off the kitchen floor while he sat in the living room yelling at the TV and drinking beer. He didn't look at me. Not once. Later that night, I tried to say something. I don't even remember what, something small, like, "We need milk." He slammed his glass down and growled, "You think I care about what you need? You lost the baby. Now shut your damn mouth and be useful. That's when I learned to stay silent. I started speaking in soft whispers, walking on eggshells, and making myself small in every room. I apologized for things I didn't do, laughed when I wasn't amused, and forced smiles even when my face felt like stone. That's what survival looked like. At church, people would compliment Dale. "He's such a strong man," they'd say. "You're lucky, Martha. Not many women your age still have their husbands." Lucky. Lucky was not sleeping in the same bed as the man who once tried to drown me in the bathtub during an argument. Lucky was making it to 60 without snapping under the weight of being treated like a disposable object. Do you want to know what he told me one night when I was too tired to cook dinner after working a double shift at the diner? "You're just a worn-out mule. That's all you are now. Wrinkled, useless. Nobody's going to want you. I could have left you years ago, but I felt sorry for you." And the worst part? I started believing him. I didn't have girlfriends. He made sure of that. Said they'd fill my head with feminist poison. I didn't have a bank account of my own. Every dollar I earned went to bills with his name on them. I didn't even have a cell phone until last year, and that only happened because my son needed to reach me when Dale was in the hospital. The same son who once told me, "Mom, you should be more grateful to Dad. He's the reason we have a house." He didn't see the bruises. He didn't hear the screaming through the walls. He didn't notice how I limped for weeks after Dale accidentally pushed me down the stairs. But I survived, quietly, painfully, alone. And then, something happened. Something so unexpected, so divine, that it made all those years of silence start to shake. Like a sleeping volcano finally rumbling. And for once, it wasn't me begging. It was him. It was a Tuesday. Funny how you remember the day even when everything else becomes a blur. Just a plain old Tuesday. Dale had been in one of his moods since the weekend, snapping over small things, slamming doors, calling me names I won't even repeat here. Words that sting harder than a belt. He didn't like the stew I made. Said it tasted like wet dog food and that I was too dumb to boil potatoes right. He knocked the bowl off the table with the back of his hand. It shattered against the linoleum, and the stew splattered on my legs, burning hot. He didn't even blink. Then he went to take a shower, muttering under his breath about how I was wasting his time and food and life. 15 minutes later, I heard it. A crash, followed by a thud that shook the house. I didn't run. I walked. I found him at the bottom of the stairs, naked, humiliated, groaning in agony. He'd slipped in the bathroom, his wet foot catching the edge of the step. When I saw the twisted shape of his leg and the pale panic on his face, 1,000 thoughts rushed through me. I could leave him there. I could walk out and never come back. I could finally be free. Instead, I did what I always did. I dialed 911. I fetched a towel. I waited by the door while he moaned and cursed and cried, not out of pain, but from the shame of being weak. The ambulance came. The paramedics asked me if he fell, and he barked, "Don't you dare say a damn word, Martha." I just nodded like the trained little servant I'd become. That night in the hospital, I stood outside his room and overheard the doctor. "You're going to need surgery, Mr. Connolly. And after that, months of rehab. You'll be dependent on someone for quite a while." When I walked in, his eyes locked onto mine with dread. He knew. He knew he was going to need me. And for the first time, I saw it. Fear. Real, honest fear in his eyes. It was a strange thing, watching the man who terrorized me for 30 years shrink into a helpless heap of flesh and arrogance. The mighty Dale Connolly, who used to tower over me with fists and insults, now couldn't even lift himself off a pillow. And I, Martha, the quiet ghost of a wife, was suddenly the only person left who could help him. Or not. I drove home in silence that night. My hands were steady, my eyes dry. I passed the corner where he once screamed at me in front of strangers. Past the mailbox where he threw my mother's day card in the trash unopened. Past the flower shop I wasn't allowed to visit because flowers are for whores and funerals. I passed them all. But something inside me didn't pass by. It stopped. It stood up. And it whispered, "You don't owe him anything." The first time the hospital called, I let it ring. No voicemail. Just silence. The second time, they left a message. "Mrs. Connolly, your husband is requesting assistance with discharge planning. He refuses all rehab facilities and insists on coming home. He says you'll take care of him." I stared at the phone for a long time. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat in the kitchen with the message playing on repeat, hearing the words over and over. He says you'll take care of him. No apology. No remorse. Just a demand, passed through someone else's voice. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was worried about Dale, but because something new was stirring in me. A war I hadn't expected. I thought that when the time came, I'd rush to help him. Like I always did, but I didn't move. And that terrified me and thrilled me. The next morning, the social worker called. This time, I picked up. "Mrs. Connolly, we need to make arrangements for your husband's care at home. He says he has no one else. He's refusing the nursing home option." I asked her one question. "Did he mention what he did to me?" Silence. I heard her shuffle papers. Then, softly, "No, ma'am. He didn't mention anything." Of course he didn't. Because to Dale, I was furniture. A convenience. Not a person with scars or history or rights. Just a background object that refilled his glass and folded his socks and absorbed his cruelty. "Tell him I'm not available," I said calmly. "Tell him I'm sick. Tell him I moved. I don't care what you tell him. But I'm done." And I hung up. I expected fear to rush in after the call. Expected guilt, maybe. Shame. Something. But instead, I felt peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I made myself a cup of tea and stood at the back door, looking at the garden I never had time to plant. I was 67. My hands were wrinkled. My back hurt most mornings. But I was still here. And I wasn't picking up his calls anymore. That night, he tried calling me himself. 6 times. I let it ring. Let it echo through the empty house. Let him sit in his hospital bed, cold and alone, knowing the one woman he'd sworn would never leave him, already had. He wanted me back because he was helpless, not because he was sorry. And I wasn't going to waste another second on a man who only remembered I existed when he needed someone to clean his bedpan. It came in the form of a voicemail. Croaky, weak, almost unrecognizable, like time and shame had started eating away at his voice the same way they'd eaten away at my youth. "Martha, I know you're mad. I know I wasn't. I wasn't good to you. But I need you now. I need my wife. I don't trust these damn nurses. I want to come home. Please. I'll be better. I swear. Just don't leave me here. My wife. My wife." As if I was still something that belonged to him. Like a tool or a pair of shoes. Like the word wife could wipe away decades of bruises, heartbreak, and silence. I sat with that word wife for a long time. It used to mean something to me. When I was 21 and wore that white dress with trembling hands and hopeful eyes. When I believed that love meant protection and promises were sacred. But Dale had buried that meaning long ago beneath broken glass, shouted insults, and cold stares across the dinner table. I wasn't a wife to him. I was a shield. A punching bag. A prop to keep up appearances. And now, with his bones broken and pride shattered, he wanted to press rewind and call me wife like nothing ever happened? No. No, sir. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was a survivor. A woman who had walked through hell and come out the other side with ash in her lungs but fire in her soul. I didn't delete the voicemail. I saved it. Not because I planned to respond, but because I wanted to remember that moment. The sound of Dale Connolly needing me. Not to serve him. Not to fear him. But because he had no other choice. That was the last time he called me wife. The next time he tried, I had already blocked his number. I wasn't a ghost anymore. And I wasn't going back. You'd think after decades of suffering, your children might see you. really see you. But sometimes, the silence doesn't just come from a husband, it seeps into your sons too. My oldest, Jason, moved across the country years ago. We speak maybe once a year, his way of keeping up appearances. I know he tells his friends I'm doing well, even though he never asks how I really am. But it's the younger one, Evan, that cuts deeper. Evan stayed close. Lived just 2 towns over. Called me Ma when he needed something. Borrowed money when his checks bounced. Came over for birthdays when his wife reminded him. But when it came to Dale, he was his father's son through and through. He never saw the bruises. Or maybe he did, but chose not to. I remember one night, Dale had thrown a plate across the kitchen. It shattered near my feet. I was barefoot. Blood ran down my heel like paint down a wall. Evan, 17 at the time, peeked in from the hallway. You know what he said? Dad's just stressed. Stop pissing him off, Ma. That was the first time I felt like a stranger in my own home. I was standing in my kitchen, bleeding, and my own son told me it was my fault. So when Dale ended up in the hospital, broken and helpless, I thought maybe Evan would finally see. Maybe he'd realize how fragile his strong father really was. Maybe he'd finally come to me, ask me if I was okay. But he didn't. He showed up at my door 2 days later. Not with flowers. Not with apologies. But with papers. Power of attorney papers. Dad wants you to sign these, he said, not even stepping inside. I looked down at the folder, then up at the son I once nursed through scarlet fever with tears in my eyes. He wants me to take care of him again? Evan shrugged. He doesn't trust the staff. You're his wife. He says you'll understand. Understand? Understand what? That he only remembered me when his hands couldn't function anymore? That after using me like a maid, a punching bag, and a coat rack for 30 years, now he suddenly wanted my help? I handed the folder back to Evan. No. He blinked. What? No, Evan. I'm not signing anything. And I'm not taking care of him. But he's Dad, he snapped. He gave you everything. I stepped forward, my voice as steady as a mountain. He took everything from me. And you watched him do it. He stood there, stunned. Like the words had slapped him harder than Dale ever hit me. Then he said something I'll never forget. If you don't help him, we'll lose the house. That's when I laughed. Because suddenly, it all made sense. This wasn't about love, or regret, or family. It was about money, power, control. And for once, I had all three. Let me tell you a secret, one I kept buried deeper than the bruises, deeper than the memories. I had money, not a lot at first, but enough to grow. Every time I picked up a double shift at the diner, every time I ironed some neighbor's curtains or cleaned someone else's attic for cash, I tucked away a little. $1 here, 5 there. Hidden in places no one ever looked, inside the hem of an old coat, under the drawer liner in the bathroom cabinet, inside empty flower containers. I called it my freedom fund. It started as survival money. A fantasy fund for the day I'd finally have the courage to leave. But years passed. I never left. So the money just grew. When I finally opened a separate bank account in secret, I felt like a criminal and a warrior. Over time, that secret savings became something more than a backup plan. It became proof. Proof that I could take care of myself. That I wasn't helpless. That I wasn't just Dale's shadow. And then something beautiful happened. Technology. I took a free community class for seniors on investing. Dale never knew. He was too busy yelling at the TV and mocking dumb liberals to notice I'd been quietly turning pocket change into portfolios. I bought small shares, safe, slow-moving stocks. Learned about compounding. Got smarter. Wiser. Quieter. By the time Dale fell down those stairs, I had over $300,000. It wasn't millions, but it was mine, and it was more than enough to start over. So when Evan told me we'll lose the house, I smiled for the first time in a long time. Because that house? It was in Dale's name, and I didn't need it anymore. Let them lose the house. Let them feel what it's like to sleep on a couch, to beg for space, to knock on doors that no longer open. They thought I was weak. Just a wife. Just a mother. Just some old woman with bad knees and a broken past. But I was so much more. And the day I walked into the bank and moved all my funds into a new account with my name only on it, was the day I stopped being a victim. It was a Sunday. Quiet. The kind of day I used to spend in the kitchen, cooking Dale's meals while he sat in front of the TV and barked for more salt, more beer, more obedience. But this Sunday was mine. I had my tea, my peace, and for the first time in decades, my silence. Until the knock. 3 sharp, impatient thuds. Not like a neighbor. Not like a friend. No, this knock was familiar. I peeked through the curtain. It was him. Dale. Propped up on a walker, wearing wrinkled clothes and a face full of desperation. His skin looked pale. His mouth pursed like he wanted to yell, but couldn't afford to. I didn't open the door. I just stood there and watched. For a moment, I thought of all the times I had bled in that house. All the times he slammed the door in my face. Called me names. Pushed me when I was pregnant. Humiliated me in front of our children. And now here he was, trembling on my porch, weak and wobbly, as if his bones were finally matching the blackness of his heart. He knocked again. "Martha," he croaked. "Please. Just talk to me." I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. I wasn't the same. I stood straighter. Spoke softer. But colder. "You're not welcome here," I said. "You made sure of that for 30 years. He blinked. Tried to laugh, but it came out as a wheeze. "You're my wife." "No," I said. "I was your property. You used me like a chair. Sat on me when you were tired. Threw me across the room when you were angry. And now that you've got nowhere to go, you think I'm going to open my arms." "Martha, please," he said, voice cracking. "I can't do this without you. I have no one. No one." I said quietly. "You had me for 3 decades. And you beat, broke, and belittled me until there was nothing left." He looked down at his shaking hands. "I don't even have the money for my meds. Evan. Evan said you could help. So that's what this was. Not love. Not remorse. Need. Always need. Let me tell you something, Dale," I said, voice steady like a mountain. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to carry your sickness. You made your bed. Sleep in it." Then I did what he never expected. I closed the door in his face. And locked it. I leaned against the frame as he knocked again, weaker this time. The sound faded slowly until there was only quiet. A silence I chose. A week passed after I turned Dale away. I expected backlash. Maybe Evan would call, yell, accuse me of abandoning his father. But he didn't. Not at first. Instead, I got silence, another kind I'd grown used to. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. But the voice that came through stopped me cold. "Ma, it's me, Evan. I don't know what to do. They're taking the house. I tried to refinance. I thought Dad had more saved. He doesn't. Everything's gone. We're going to lose everything. I know we haven't been close. But, please, I need your help. My help. From the same son who once told me I was exaggerating the abuse. Who said, maybe if you didn't nag him so much, he wouldn't get so angry. The same son who watched his father scream at me through gritted teeth on Christmas Eve and still handed him the first slice of ham like he was the hero of the table. Now he was the one calling at 6:30 a.m. with panic in his voice. I sat down in the kitchen, folded my hands, and stared at the window. The rain blurred the world outside, like everything was melting. The truth is, I wanted to help. Not for them. But for me. For that piece of me that still believed in being a mother. In being kind. In being better than the people who hurt me. But kindness doesn't mean self-destruction. So I called him back. "Evan," I said softly. "Ma, thank God." "I didn't think you'd. I'm not giving you a penny." He was silent. But I will give you advice, I continued. Walk away. Let the house go. Let your father face what he created. And you, take your wife and start over. Don't become him. I can't just start over, he snapped. I've got kids. A mortgage. Debts. So did I said. And I had no one to help me. I bled on floors, Evan. Slept on towels. Ate saltines for dinner. You never asked how I survived because you didn't want to hear the answer. But I did. And now you will too. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, in a voice I hadn't heard since he was a child, small, broken, scared, he whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't say I forgave him. Not yet. That's the thing about betrayal, it's a long road back if you ever come back at all. It wasn't a holiday. It wasn't my birthday. There were no balloons, no cake, no one clapping. But it was the most liberating day of my life. I woke up to sunlight pouring through the curtains, warm against my skin. For the first time in over 3 decades, I hadn't been jolted awake by the sound of slamming drawers or a man shouting about where his socks were. I stretched my arms. No bruises. No fear in my chest. No voice barking orders. Just me. I made coffee in silence. I didn't have to rush to make anyone breakfast. No one accused me of burning the toast or ruining the eggs. I sat at my tiny kitchen table and sipped slowly, listening to the birds outside. And then I did something radical. I laughed. Not the nervous kind you fake at a family dinner. A real laugh. From the gut. Because I realized I was finally living a life where I could breathe without permission. I dressed in my favorite yellow sweater, one Dale once told me made me look like an old banana, and walked outside to the front porch. I watered the plants. I waved at neighbors. I even chatted with a mail carrier I hadn't seen before. She said, "You look lovely today, ma'am." And instead of shrinking or mumbling, I smiled and said, "Thank you." That night, I made myself pasta loaded with garlic because no one was around to complain about the smell. I lit a candle. Not for romance. For peace. And as I sat at my table, alone but not lonely, I wrote down something I hadn't written in years. Things I want to do. Just for me. Visit the ocean again. Learn how to paint. Write my story. Dance in the living room without shame. Forgive myself. Because for years, I thought freedom had to come from someone else. I waited for Dale to change. Waited for my sons to see me. Waited for a world that never came. But that morning, no banners, no big parade. I realized something life-altering. Freedom comes when you stop waiting. It doesn't knock. You have to build it. And once you taste it, even just a sip, you'll never let anyone take it from you again. I wrote it on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting by the window with the same blue pen I used to write grocery lists back when I wasn't allowed to spend more than $20 at a time. It wasn't a revenge letter. Not a rant. It was something else, more like an exorcism. A release. I addressed it to Dale. But really, it was for me. Dear Dale, you once told me I'd be nothing without you. You said no one would want me. That I was lucky you kept me around. You said my voice was annoying, my ideas were stupid, and my body was a joke. You called me names I still hear in my sleep. You hit me. You humiliated me. You crushed every ounce of light I had inside me until I couldn't recognize the woman in the mirror. And then you smiled about it. Bragged about how you kept me in line. But here's the thing you never understood. I am something without you. I survived you. I survived your fists, your words, your silence, your control. I raised children while bleeding. I cooked meals with a broken wrist. I smiled through missing teeth because you knocked them out when I looked at you wrong. I stayed. I bent. I broke. But I never disappeared. And now that you're weak, now that your legs don't work and your pride is in pieces, you finally look at me like I matter? No. You don't get to call me wife now. You had a wife. And you destroyed her. So this letter isn't for forgiveness. It's not even for closure. It's a reminder. You lost me the day you threw me across the kitchen while our son watched from the hallway. That boy is grown now. And I hope he's watching again. Watching the woman you tried to erase reclaim her voice. Her power. Her story. Goodbye, Dale. I'm not yours anymore. Martha, I never sent it. I folded it, placed it in an envelope, and slid it into the back of my journal. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need him to read it. I just needed to write it. It was my truth, my proof, my freedom letter. That night, I slept with it under my pillow. And for the first time in decades, I didn't dream of running. I dreamed of standing tall. It came on a Thursday afternoon, just as I was about to settle in with my tea and a mystery novel. The number on the screen was local, but I didn't recognize it. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Mrs. Connolly, the voice asked. I hadn't heard that name used with any warmth in decades. Yes, speaking, I said carefully. This is Jennifer Morales from the Community Trust Bank. I'm calling because your name is listed as a co-signer on a second mortgage application submitted by Mr. Dale Connolly yesterday. I nearly dropped the phone. Co-signer? Mortgage? Excuse me, I said, gripping the kitchen counter. That can't be right. I haven't signed anything. Yes, ma'am. That's why we're calling, Jennifer said gently. The signature doesn't match previous documentation. And when we contacted Mr. Connolly, he became agitated. Claimed you gave verbal consent. My blood ran cold. That snake. He was trying to forge my name. To take out money against a house I no longer lived in, a house I had poured my life into. After all the years he told me I wasn't worth a dime, now he was trying to steal from me again. Except this time, I wasn't the same woman. Jennifer, I said calmly, thank you for calling. That is absolutely fraudulent. I want to press charges if he attempts this again. She paused. Would you like to speak to our legal advisor? No, I said. I'd like to speak to the fraud department. And then, I'd like to freeze anything connected to his name. I hung up the phone and sat at the kitchen table, trembling. Not from fear, but from rage. It was never enough for Dale to take my body, my time, my voice. Now he wanted my future. And he was willing to lie, forge, and steal to do it. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was learning. I'd taken courses, talked to lawyers, gotten advice. I knew my rights. And for the first time in my life, I had a plan. So I called the attorney I'd quietly retained 6 months earlier, just in case. Linda, I said, it's time we talk about a restraining order. And about my will. Understood, she said. You ready to take full control? I looked out the window at the world Dale used to keep me locked away from. Yes, I whispered. I think it's time. It was a Saturday morning. I was sipping tea and flipping through the local paper. Yes, the actual paper, not the digital kind. I liked the smell of it, the weight of the pages, the way it made me feel connected to the world again. I wasn't expecting to see my own name. But there it was. Right on the second page under local legal notices. Notice of civil dispute. Dale Connolly versus Martha Connolly. Matter involving alleged breach of marital obligation and denial of spousal support. Preliminary hearing scheduled. I stared at the print, heart pounding in my chest. Not from fear, from fury. After everything he did, he was suing me. He was dragging my name into the public, accusing me of abandoning him, of denying him care, as if the decades of abuse, bruises, miscarriages, and emotional torment weren't enough. He wanted a courtroom to rewrite history, to make me the villain. I folded the paper slowly. My hands were steady. I had expected something like this. Dale never went down without a scene. But what he didn't realize was, this time, I wasn't alone. I already had a lawyer, already had evidence, photos, journals, doctor reports, even that voicemail he left begging for help. Linda, my attorney, had warned me this could happen. Abusers don't cope well when their control is taken away, she said. It's common for them to lash out legally. But don't worry, you have the truth. And we have the law. I sat at my table, the legal notice resting beside my tea, and I smiled. Because for the first time, I wasn't hiding anymore. My name was out there. And I wasn't ashamed. Let the town see it. Let them read it. Let them ask, isn't that Dale's wife? The one who was always so quiet. Yes, the quiet woman. The invisible one. The one who had been cleaning her own blood off the floor while people praised her husband for staying married so long. Well, not anymore. This time, I wasn't walking into that courtroom in shame. I was walking in with truth. And Dale? He'd be forced to sit in front of a judge and hear my story out loud, maybe for the first time ever. I never thought I'd see the inside of a courtroom, not unless I was serving jury duty or watching one of those true crime shows. But there I was seated in the front row, my hands folded, my back straight, wearing a navy blue blouse and the silver locket my mother gave me before she passed. Inside that locket was a picture of me before Dale, before the bruises, before the silence. And beside me sat Linda, my attorney, steady, strong, and fierce in her quiet way. Across the room, I saw him, Dale. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not just physically, though the walker, sunken cheeks, and frail posture made him look like a man crumbling under his own weight. No, it was something else. He looked beaten. But not by me. By the very life he once thought he controlled. The judge entered. Everyone rose. And, just like that, it began. Dale's lawyer, a smug, balding man with a tone that could sour milk, started spewing lies. Mr. Connolly has been left without care. His spouse abandoned him in his time of greatest need. This is a matter of neglect, Your Honor. Of spousal cruelty in reverse. I didn't flinch, because then it was our turn. Linda stood up and unfolded a timeline. Photos, medical records, a sworn affidavit from a neighbor who had heard Dale screaming at me for years through our shared wall. Then she played the voicemail. I know I wasn't good to you, but I need you now. That one sentence hung in the air like smoke. The courtroom was silent. And then Linda did something I wasn't expecting. She turned to me. Mrs. Connolly, she said, would you like to say something? My legs trembled a bit as I stood, but I found my footing. I looked straight at the judge, then straight at Dale. And I spoke not as his wife, not as a victim, as a woman who had lived through hell and come back wiser. I gave 30 years of my life to that man, I said. I lost a child on the kitchen floor because of him. I wore long sleeves in summer to hide the bruises. I raised 2 sons while pretending everything was fine. I lost myself, piece by piece, until one day there was nothing left but duty. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. And now he wants to sue me? For walking away? For surviving? No, Your Honor. This isn't about abandonment. This is about power. About a man who can't stand that the woman he abused no longer fears him. I sat down, my hands cold but my heart burning. The judge stared at Dale for a long moment, then turned to his lawyer. Motion denied. Case dismissed. Those 3 words felt like a symphony. Dale didn't speak. He just sat there, lips pressed thin, eyes hollow. I walked past him on my way out. Didn't look down. Didn't speak. But just as I reached the door, I heard him whisper, "Please, don't leave me like this." I paused. And then, with every ounce of strength I had, I said, "You already did that to me." And I walked out. Into the sunlight. Into my future. I thought that courtroom would be the end of the story. I thought justice, once served, would wrap it all up in a neat little bow and send me quietly into retirement. But something happened I never expected. Other women found me. It started with a knock at my door a week after the trial. I hesitated before opening it because for years, knocks meant danger. But this time, it was different. Her name was Jolene, 63 years old. Soft voice. Wore a denim jacket with flowers stitched on the cuffs. She lived just 2 streets over and said she'd seen the article in the local newsletter. I never knew, she said. But I always wondered. I used to hear things. Screaming. Glass. I'm sorry I didn't say anything back then. I told her it wasn't her fault. Because the truth is people did hear. But no one wants to get involved in what they think is just a couple fighting. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I'm still with mine. And I think I need help." That night, we drank tea and talked for 4 hours straight. She cried into a paper napkin. I told her about the letter I never sent. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was helping. Word spread. By the end of the month, there were 6 of us. 6 women. All over 60. All with stories that sounded like mine in one form or another. Gloria, who had once been locked in a basement for 2 days because her husband didn't like her tone. Nadine, who was told she couldn't have her own phone because women gossip too much. Lisa, who hadn't seen a paycheck in years, despite working every day in her husband's auto shop. Teresa, who still flinched when someone dropped a spoon. We met every Friday in my living room. No rules. Just stories. Just truth. And we laughed. God, we laughed. Because when the pain has lived in your body long enough, laughter becomes medicine. It washes out the shame, breaks the silence, says you are not alone. I watched these women bloom like wildflowers, awkward and tangled at first, but growing in every direction once they were no longer caged. We started calling ourselves the Survivors Club. It wasn't official. No sign on the door. No t-shirts. Just strength. Soft, quiet, powerful strength. And one evening, Gloria stood up with a shaky voice and said, "Martha, you saved my life." I smiled. Because they saved mine too. It happened quietly. No sirens. No screams. Just a sign in the yard that read foreclosure. Bank-owned property. I saw it on my afternoon walk, about a block from my house, leaning slightly to the left like even the wood was ashamed. It was our house. The house where I raised 2 sons. Cooked every meal. Was beaten. Silenced. Forgotten. And now it stood empty. No lights. No truck in the driveway. No Dale. I stopped on the sidewalk and just stared at it. The paint was peeling, the gutters sagging, and the lawn had surrendered to weeds. It looked like a ghost of itself, exactly how I used to feel. For a moment, I felt a pang of something. Not grief. Not nostalgia. Something like release. Because I remembered how I used to sit at that front window, hiding a bruise behind the curtain while Dale drank beer on the porch and made crude comments to the neighbor's daughter. I remembered mopping blood off those kitchen tiles, clenching my teeth so the boys wouldn't hear me cry. I remembered the upstairs bathroom, where I once locked myself in for hours after he told me, maybe if you weren't such a pathetic excuse for a woman, I wouldn't have to hit you. And now the whole thing was gone. The bank had taken it back. Stripped the title out of his hands. Left him with nothing but memory and misery. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. A week earlier, I had received a final message from Evan. He didn't even bother calling this time, just a text. "Dad's living at a shelter now. I tried. He's still blaming you. Says it's all your fault. I'm done too." I stared at that message for a long time. Evan was right to walk away. Just like I had. Some men don't change. Not because they can't, but because they never wanted to. And as I stood there on that sidewalk, watching the wind blow a loose shutter against the siding, I realized that house never belonged to me. Not truly. I gave it everything, my labor, my laughter, my love, but it swallowed it all and gave me back only pain. And now, with it rotting under a foreclosure sign, I felt free. I turned and walked home. My home. The one I bought with my money. My peace. My strength. The Survivors Club was meeting that night. And I had a bottle of wine chilling, a warm blanket folded on the couch, and 5 women on the way who saw me for who I truly was. Not a wife. Not a victim. A woman reborn. There's something holy about an empty living room when the lights are low and the world is quiet. It was one of those nights. The Survivors Club had just left, after hours of laughter, warm soup, and shared stories that could break your heart and still somehow heal it. The last goodbyes had been said, the dishes were done, and the soft hum of the heater whispered through the house like a lullaby. I should have gone to bed. My knees were aching, and my eyes were tired. But something stopped me. A song came on the radio, an old one. A tune I hadn't heard in years. Something Dale used to hate. Said it was women's crap. Too soft. Too emotional. Too free. I stood in the center of the room and just listened for a moment. And then I did something I hadn't done since I was in my 20s. I danced. No choreography. No rhythm. Just movement. Just feeling. Just me moving my body the way it wanted to move, like the music was pulling the chains off, one by one. I closed my eyes and let my arms float. My feet slid against the floor, and I spun once, slowly, carefully. I laughed out loud at how clumsy I was. But I didn't stop. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't dancing for anyone else. Not to please a husband. Not to entertain a son. Not to fill silence or avoid a fight. I was dancing because I wanted to, and I swear to you, in that moment, I felt young again. Not in my bones, but in my soul. The woman who used to tremble when her name was called, she wasn't here anymore. The one who used to flinch when footsteps echoed down the hall? Gone. What was left was a woman who had faced cruelty, betrayal, humiliation, and survived. Who had been beaten to the floor and stood back up again and again until her spine was made of fire instead of fear. I danced until the song ended. And then I stood there, alone, chest rising and falling, heart pounding like a war drum. And I said aloud, to no one, "You didn't win, Dale." I lit a candle. I sipped my tea. And I sat by the window, watching the moon rise over the quiet street, knowing deep in my bones that the rest of my life was mine. Every minute, every breath, every slow, beautiful dance. It arrived on a Tuesday, no return address, just my name written in tidy, careful script. I almost tossed it aside, assuming it was another ad or maybe one of those religious pamphlets people slide into mailboxes. But something about the handwriting stopped me. I opened it slowly, like it might crumble in my hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. Dear Martha, you don't know me very well. I'm Evan's wife, Cynthia. We met only a few times, and I'm sure you barely remember me. But I've remembered you. I've remembered the way you stayed quiet when Dale barked orders across the table at you during Thanksgiving. I remembered how you smiled and took plates into the kitchen without a word, even when you looked like you wanted to cry. I remember asking Evan once, "Why does your mom always look like she's about to disappear?" He told me, "She's just sensitive." But now I know better. Evan's been different lately. Quiet, short-tempered, distant. And last week, when I asked him what was going on, he broke down. He told me everything. About the abuse. About the hospital. About the lawsuit. About how he stood by his father for years because he thought that's what loyalty meant. But you were the one who survived. And now, I see what I couldn't see before. I'm writing you because I want to say something Evan still doesn't know how to say out loud. I'm sorry. For not asking. For not seeing. For not stepping in. And also, thank you. Thank you for showing strength when everyone else looked the other way. Thank you for walking out of that house when every bone in your body told you to stay and suffer quietly. Thank you for not raising your voice, but raising your story instead. Evan says he doesn't think you'll ever forgive him. I don't blame you. But I just wanted you to know, your strength is saving more people than you know, including him. With love, Cynthia. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, my hands trembled a little less. By the 3rd reading, I wasn't crying from grief. I was crying because somewhere in that tangle of heartbreak and betrayal, someone saw me, truly saw me. Not as the wife. Not as the mother. Not even as the victim. As a woman who had been through hell and come back with her soul intact. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it between the pages of my journal, and I whispered a quiet prayer for Cynthia. For every woman who stands on the outside of pain, trying to make sense of it. And for every man like Evan who might, just might, still have time to change. I never believed in miracles, not the kind people write in books or preach about on Sundays. Not after everything I'd seen. Not after years of praying for change and waking up to the same bruises, the same silence, the same cold dinner table. But sometimes, miracles don't arrive wrapped in thunder and light. Sometimes, they slip in quietly, like an apology you never thought would come. It was a Sunday evening, and I was folding towels, something I'd done 1,000 times in silence, always for someone else. This time, it was just for me. The house smelled like lavender. The wind was soft through the window. The world felt calm. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. And I don't answer for strangers anymore. Not unless I know they're safe. But something tugged at me. When I opened the door, it wasn't Dale. It was Evan. He looked older than I remembered. Tired in a different way. Not physically, but emotionally, like life had finally started carving the same lines into him that I'd been carrying for years. He didn't speak right away. Just stood there, hands stuffed deep in his jacket pockets, eyes down at the porch. "I'm not here for Dad," he finally said. "I haven't seen him in over a month." I said nothing. "I lost the apartment," he continued. "We're staying with friends for now. I'm working 2 jobs. It's hard. I know it's nothing compared to what you went through," but his voice broke. Then he looked up, and I saw it in his eyes. Not just guilt, not just regret, remorse. "Mom," he whispered, "I was wrong. About everything." He stepped closer. I watched him do things no child should watch a father do, and I still defended him. "I didn't protect you. I didn't believe you. And now that I'm a father myself, I don't know how to live with that." I didn't cry. Not right away. But something inside me, something old and bruised, started to melt. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry." I took a breath. Long, deep. Because for so long, I imagined this moment, him coming back, realizing, understanding. And I thought I'd slam the door in his face. Tell him it was too late. But the miracle wasn't that he said sorry. The miracle was that I wasn't broken anymore. I didn't need his apology to be whole. I had already done that work. Quietly. Day by day. Breath by breath. But hearing it? Hearing my son finally, truly, see me? It felt like sunlight after decades of rain. "I don't know what happens next," I said softly. "Me neither," he whispered. "But I'd like to try." I nodded. And then slowly, carefully, I opened the door wider. Not because I forgot, but because I'd grown strong enough to decide for myself what forgiveness looked like. And that strength? That calm? That miracle? It was mine. My name is Martha Connolly, but I no longer belong to that name like I once did. For years, it felt like a chain. A prison sentence. A reminder of who I was supposed to be: wife, mother, caretaker, punching bag, invisible. But now, when I say my name out loud, it feels like a declaration. Martha. Survivor. Builder. Woman. I kept the name not because I owe it to Dale, but because I reclaimed it. I took what was broken and made it whole. On my own terms. Every morning, I wake up in my small but peaceful home. No yelling. No doors slamming. No shame breathing down my neck. Just sunlight through the curtains and the quiet comfort of peace. The Survivors Club meets every Friday. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we just sit in silence, sipping tea and knowing that we're no longer alone in this world. Evan visits once a month now. He helps with repairs around the house. He's not perfect, no one is. But he's trying, and for the first time, I see effort in his eyes. I see healing. As for Dale, the last I heard, he was living in a government-funded facility. Alone. Bitter. Still blaming the world. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. But I no longer carry a shadow. And if you're still watching, still listening, I want to say something just for you. Whether you're in Georgia, or Ghana, or Germany. Whether you're 67 like me or just 27 but feeling tired beyond your years. Whether your scars are visible or buried, so deep you don't even know they're still bleeding, you are not alone. If you're still breathing, you still have power. If you're still standing, you're already surviving. And if someone tells you you're worthless, too old, too broken, they're lying. You are not the things they called you. You are not what they did to you. You are who you decide to become. So, if this story meant something to you, if even one word felt like your own, please do something for me. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Hit that like button if this story hit your heart. Share this with someone who needs it. Someone still stuck. Someone still silent. And please subscribe. Because stories like ours, they need to be heard. My name is Martha, and this was the story of how I stopped surviving and started living.